Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request permission to advise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, today I'm proud to introduce the Peace Corps Reauthorization Act of 2019. I want to thank my returned Peace Corps volunteers, Joe Kennedy and Donna Shalala, as well as the chairs of the Peace Corps Caucus, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Graves, Mr. Sires, Mr. Regadan, and Ms. Shalala, for their support as original co-sponsors. Like successive generations of young Americans, my wife Patti and I answered President John F. Kennedy's call and served in the Peace Corps in Ethiopia in 1966 to 68. This foundational experience inspired our lifetime of service that continued in state government in California, the Clinton administration, and now the United States Congress. Since the establishment of the Peace Corps in 1961, more than 230,000 Americans have volunteered and have served in 141 countries around the world. When the Africans fought for their independence, the Peace Corps volunteers came and they were there to assist in the transition in countries throughout that continent. They were there as teachers, community development, agriculture, and so that tradition carried on in countries all around the world. And today there are some 8,000 Peace Corps volunteers in 65 countries. Now more than ever, Congress should and must support the Peace Corps mission and realize President Kennedy's vision of generations of young Americans ready to serve their nation and make the world a better place, and return home to America to continue to educate all Americans about what is going on around the world. Our Peace Corps Reauthorization Act of 2019 would do just this by providing additional federal resources to better support current, returning, and former Peace Corps volunteers by doing the following. First, since 2002, the Peace Corps has not been reauthorized. So we would pick up that and make the Peace Corps reauthorization good for the next 5 years. We would authorize $450 million per fiscal year for the Peace Corps and increase over the flat $410 million that has been provided in the current year. We'd also direct the Peace Corps to establish new volunteer opportunities that promote internet adoption and development in countries and engage tech-savvy American volunteers. We would increase the monthly allowance for Peace Corps volunteers and leaders to $417 per month of service completed to reflect the increase in the cost of living and provide a $10,000 for the 2-year full term of service. We would reform the Peace Corps National Advisory Council that's been in abeyance since 1980 by providing that donated funds from qualified nonprofit organization would cover all administrative costs of the Advisory Council with no cost to the taxpayers. We would include the Respect for Peace Corps Volunteer Act, H.R. 1411, sponsored by Congressman Sires of New Jersey since 2013, and allow the use of Peace Corps logo and headstones and other funeral memorials in recognition of the meaning that the deceased Peace Corps volunteers had, that the Peace Corps had in the lives of the deceased volunteers. We would codify President Kennedy's 1963 executive order affording returned Peace Corps volunteers a 12-month hiring preference for most federal job openings, and also deal with the shutdowns that occasionally occur. We would require the Peace Corps and the U.S. State Department Bureau of Diplomatic Security to routinely update existing memorandums of agreement for Peace Corps volunteer security and consular protection in foreign countries. We would clarify that American Samoans and other U.S. nationals have the opportunity to serve in the Peace Corps and be volunteers as well as leadership positions. We would also increase the workers' compensation rate for Peace Corps volunteers. This bipartisan bill builds upon the success of Sam Farr and Nick Castle Peace Corps Reform Act of 2018, Public Law 11.5-256, sponsored by former Congressman Ted Poe of Texas. Our bill also builds upon legislation sponsored by my California colleague, Sam Farr, who served in the Peace Corps in 1964 to 66. As co-chairman of the Peace Corps Caucus, I'm proud to continue the work in support of the Peace Corps mission and its volunteers and their indelible impact upon the service. I ask all members of the Congress to co-sponsor this legislation and support it. It's important, and I look forward to working with the Foreign Affairs Committee, Chairman Engel and Ranking Member McCall, to advance the Peace Corps Reauthorization Act. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.